Let's get my biggest problem with this mouse out of the way. Its name, Fantech Helios 2 Pro XDV3. Come on, that's a pretty horrible name. I'm calling it the Helios 2 for the rest of this video, but apart from that, this is actually a surprisingly solid budget gaming mouse, especially for people who like the Zowie S2 shape. And yes, the shape is really quite like a Zowie S2. And what that means is you get a mouse shape that will feel kind of like a narrower G Pro Superlight with the top squished down. AKA, it's not like a G Pro Superlight. I just had to have a point of reference. It is very similar, of course, to the new Zowie U2, which is the spiritual successor to the Zowie S2. So if you're someone who's looking at the S2 and want a wireless version of it, or you're looking at the Zowie U2 and thinking, maybe I want a version that's actually affordable that will not bankrupt me and my children, then the Helios 2 Pro actually makes pretty good sense thanks to that shape. This low hump that it has does fill out your palm, but it's different to most of the humps you get on most claw grip mice these days, like the G Pro or the Viper V3 Pro. Instead of filling out the top half of your palm, like this low hump that's towards the rear of the mouse fills out the bottom half of my palm more, which is an interesting feeling that some people would like. I suspect that if you have smaller hands than I do, which are 19.5 cm long hands, this mouse is going to be able to fill out your palm basically fully and consistently. But even for me, with the thing filling out only the bottom half of my palm, I do find this mouse to be really quite comfortable to use, so no big issues here. Personally, I think it's a very natural shape for both aggro and relaxed claw grips, especially if you have your palm usually more positioned towards the rear of the mouse rather than the center. And also, I think this low hump peak does mean that it's a very conducive mouse for fingertip gripping, so long as your hands are long and big enough. As for size recommendations, I personally think that this mouse is a great mouse to claw grip if you have hand sizes about 17 to 20 centimeters long. If you're trying to fingertip grip this mouse, I think you need hand sizes of at least 19 centimeters long and above to fingertip grip this, because it's not the smallest of mice. As for palm gripping this mice, it's possible, but I really don't think the way the hump is shaped is going to be a conducive palm grip experience, so if you're palm gripping, maybe look elsewhere. As for the clicks of this mouse, the Helios 2 Pro uses optical TTC gold switches, which are fine. I personally am not the biggest fan of the feel of these clicks. They're a little too clunky and stiff for my personal tastes, but the pre and post travel are very well managed, even if you don't think they are the best of the best. Now, if click feel is really important to you, more important than say having optical switch technology, I personally feel that way as well, I would just go for the newer Helios 2 Pro S, which now has Huano pink dot blue shell switches and supposedly better click feel, especially since those switches, well, they're really popular in really popular gaming mice like the Zowie stuff, and those switches are notoriously good for having excellent feel. The scroll wheel of this mouse isn't the sharpest or crispest, but it's kind of fine. It feels similar to the Viper V2 Pro, so maybe a little mushy to certain tastes, but for switching weapons or jumping around in game, it's perfectly adequate, and I don't really think it's a deal breaker. The thumb buttons are also equally decent. They're not amazing. In fact, they have a little bit of a wriggle once you press them all the way down, but they have no pre-travel, they have no significant post-travel, they feel crisp and they feel light, so I have no complaints to them. However, there is one thing about this mouse that I think is a little bad, and that is the coating. It's very, very slippery plastic, and if you're someone who doesn't have grippy fingertips, then you're going to have to use the grip tape with this mouse. Thankfully, it does come with pretty excellent grip tape in the box, so I'm not going to really complain about it, but I much rather mice that don't have to use grip tape. Once again, this is actually fixed with the newer Helios 2 Pro S, which supposedly is a mouse with better grip. So if you don't like using grip tape, the S might be a much better choice. As for performance, there really is nothing to complain for me, since you are actually getting a 3395 sensor, 4000 Hz wireless with a optional dongle, and from my testing, there's no issues with weird firmware, weird tracking problems, or weird sensor issues. So really, I have zero qualms about this mouse performance. It's also 55 grams, which is really nice and light, especially for its price, and you've got no visible holes on the top, so you don't have to feel your weird trypophobia triggering. Battery life is really nice as well on this. It can last basically a week of daily light to medium use before I have to charge it, which equates to about 30 hours of real-world usage. In my opinion, perfectly adequate for a high-performance wireless gaming mouse, and it's not something that you're gonna really really forget to charge. It also charges up pretty quickly. It can connect to, last but not least, the build quality of this mouse is nice and sturdy. I mean, there's a little bit of flex in this rear 3/4 area of the mouse if you really press hard on it. And there's a little bit of flex if you press on the base of the mouse, but that is pretty unfair to talk about since you're not going to be pinching the mouse really hard in those areas naturally when you're using it. So it's not something that I consider a majorly bad thing. All in all then, this mouse is real nice. At only 85 USD, it's a really good value. You get brilliant specs, a real good shape that will satisfy you if you're a Zowie U2 fan or a Zowie S2 fan for a much lower price. You get good quality performance that keeps up perfectly fine with basically any player or any other mouse out in the market today. And of course, this mouse has its flaws. It's only 85 USD, so it's not going to be the perfect gaming mouse. In this case, mostly the clicks and the coating being the issue. But hey, the Helios 2 Pro S, which only costs 10 USD more than this mouse, does exist and does significantly fix those problems. Not to mention that mouse does 4000 Hz wireless polling rate straight out of the box with no optional dongle, and it does 8000 Hz wired polling rate as well, so it keeps up with the latest and greatest from everyone else. So yeah, that mouse is also a pretty impressive deal in value. Anyways, good job Helios. This is, in my opinion, a pretty solid gaming mouse at a really impressive price. So for people who are looking for a mouse with this kind of shape, one with a low flat hump and a narrower grip, Helios 2 Pro and the Helios 2 Pro S, depending on your needs, at its very aggressive price, does make for a pretty solid deal. And subscribe